I don't know who this Nina Miskow is, but I think I'm in love. Well, what an amazing show they had. Okay, so first of all, full disclosure, I have never heard of Jeremy Vine before. The name seems familiar, but I couldn't associate him with anything, any place if you would ask me. So let's get that out the way. I never heard of Jeremy Vine. So while on the Twitter sphere today, I'm looking at this story. Well, it's not a story, but it's this tweet, should I say, showing my age, right? So I'm looking at this tweet, and it's a screen recording. Actually, someone just kind of held their phone up to their television and recorded the interview, which is good because if you go on the YouTube for Jeremy Vine, this segment just really doesn't show up. Nina says that how this all started was that the Queen was number one, and she always will be number one. And then you had Harry, who was number two in terms of popularity. So the Queen is at the top of the pyramid of popularity. And then for years, Prince Harry had built up his brand, if you will, and he was the most beloved in the family after the Queen. And of course, then Harry meets Meghan Markle, and she's married to him and becomes a Duchess of Sussex. So their popularity just exploded. And that put some noses out of joints, according to Nina Miskow. And I hope I'm saying her name right. The firm chose to boost William and Kate. And in conjunction with the Daily Mail and the Telegraph in particular, all of these lies were fed through the media to try to diminish the popularity of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, which in the United Kingdom has been very successful. Vine says that someone in the palace was guilty of leaking these lies. So he took exception to the fact that she mentioned the Daily Mail and the Telegraph in particular, along with the rest of the rags. But then for some reason that bothered Jeremy Vine. He said, I'd have to agree with most everything you say except for that last part. So the Daily Mail, as Nina said, ever since the Daily Mail, it's been drip, drip, poison, poison. And because of that, they have managed to, this is my words, compromise the Sussex's popularity. And so this Dawn person, whoever she was, the one wearing green, she goes, "Oh, you mean to tell me that Meghan and Harry don't use the media? They don't lie." And much to my pleasure, Nina Miskow said, they don't tell lies. The media has lied consistently. So along with that, you have the part that you can see, I believe, on the YouTube is where, and of course you have to go to Jeremy Vine's YouTube channel, the Jeremy Vine Show. It says, Nina says, I believe it's just some kind of spite and is really mean. And she also goes on to say that the Cambridge family is lost. No, I'm sorry. She said if the Cambridge family was to become lost, then Harry would become king. So she said pretty much, God forbid, if something happened to all the Cambridges, then Harry would become king. And then, of course, Archie would become the next in line. I have to tell you this. At the start of the pandemic, and at the point in which New York and London, all the major metropolitan centers in the Western world seemed to get hit really hard. Especially in Italy, of course. They were devastated by this pandemic in the early days. So New York, California, the London metropolitan area, and of course Italy were really slammed, and I may be leaving some other place out, but in those early days there was like, people were seemed like dying left and right. Excuse me. So I immediately began to think of the Cambridges, because in the isolation of the United States away from the rest of the royal family, my wild imagination said, oh my God, if something happens to the Cambridges, God forbid, then Harry might find himself the next king after Charles. Especially since at a certain point, Charles himself, and if I remember, even William, were stricken with the pandemic. I'm trying to avoid saying the other word because I don't know if I'll get in trouble for saying that. So anyway, that was my imagination. I was like, oh my God, what if Harry becomes king someday? Wouldn't that be a kick in the rubber parts? Well, of course, that's not likely to happen, especially, since children seem to have some natural protection against the worst of the virus. So, okay, so you have that to think about. And then, of course, she goes on to say, what about Edward and Sophie? So, with this whole thing of a slimmed down monarchy, that Don person was saying that Charles has been talking about this for years. Well, yes, I will say honestly, I recall Charles saying he wants to slim down the monarchy. This has been the chat going on for years about that, and I agree with him. But the thing is, if you want to slim down the monarchy because you're worried about paying for all of these extended cousins, which of course, Nina was very quick to point out that there are all these cousins that are living in these grace and favor places, which I have mentioned on occasion, the grace and favor, which is exactly what the living situation is for most of the immediate royals, and even the U-boat captain and her husband, Tsar Nicholas III. The two of them are living in a grace and favor. Kensington is all grace and favor. Whatever you hear about that place, I believe it's part of the Crown Estate. It's not owned directly by the Queen, but she is the person that delegates who lives there. And so, hence the name Grace and Favor, because it is with the good grace of the monarch and a special favor that people are living there. And for a long time, people lived there rent-free. And then once the rent was imposed, and all of a sudden, the U-boat captain and the Prince Michael of Kent, I believe they sold their country home because they could no longer afford it since they had to pay rent. Now, the rent was imposed because of the public outcry that you have all of these royals living in this very posh estate homes, if you will. In the U.S., we call them housing projects. But so they're living on these estates. But this is like the poshest address pretty much you can have outside of Buckingham Palace or number 10 Downing Street in London. So, I'm so bad. Anyway, this family never gets old to me. So, of course, then she goes, well, all of a sudden, here comes Edward and Sophie. So Ford Fiesta and Uncle Pennywise, as I love to refer to them, are now brought up from the bank vault. And, that actually adds to the firm, which is a good point. If you're so busy slimming down the monarchy, how are you bringing these two individuals into the fold? All of a sudden, they're doing interviews. All of a sudden, they seem to have like this kind of micro media blitz where everything is about Edward and Sophie. And, we're going to forget about Sophie's interesting history with the family and her other stuff because I don't like to drag that stuff out. I'm just lying. Of course, I love to drag it out. But, yeah, so you have that to consider. Is that, on the one hand, you want to slim down the monarchy, and on the other hand, you're dragging out Pennywise and the jalopy. So, are you trying to have it both ways? Well, the reason why is because there's this complete vacuum of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, or in particular, Prince Harry, who for a long time was one of the busiest royals. Of course, they always say Afro Annie. Afro Annie was the busiest one in the family. And, you know, kudos to her for that. I'm not going to dispute that. But when it came to the high profile stuff, you certainly wouldn't find Afro Annie in those situations. Am I pushing the envelope here? What am I doing? So, anyway, I'm going to finish this up. It says, and this is, Nina Miskow said, to do that to his own son. She's speaking of the whole spite of saying that, of course, they would block the titles from Archie and Lili. You know, to do that to your own son. And she said that it's not like we're paying for them. If you want to slim down the monarchy so that it won't impact the taxpayers in such a big way that it has in the past, then why are you worried about this? How does that affect the royal family if you have this prince and princess living in California, living their best life, and the taxpayers are not paying for them? And of course, that other person, oh gosh, Dawn something, I don't know. She really gave me gas with the way everything, you know, she had to push back against it. But speaking of pushing, as I said before, and I'll say it again, Prince Andrew pushed for his daughters of the blood to become princesses. I don't think by that convention of George V or fourth or fifth, they were entitled to become princesses, but there you have it, because Mummy always gives Andrew what he wants. Now, the other thing that I've mentioned before, and people from the UK say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Number one, you have no idea how much time I spend in the UK. And number two, you don't know how much of an Anglophile that I have been in the past, not anymore, of course, that I have devoured hours of reading and viewing documentaries about that little tin pot kingdom over there. I know enough, okay? I know enough. And so I know that when the Queen intervened to make Charlotte and Louis a prince and princess, that was going outside of the convention. As a matter of fact, you may even say it was grace and favor, which is why I'm wondering, if you were able to do that for the Cambridge kids, why not do that for Archie and Lily Diana? Why not do that for them? If you were able to do that for the other two kids, why not do that for Harry, who was supposedly your favorite grandson? I think that the whole thing smacks of racism. The idea that these biracial, multiracial kids somewhere in the world carrying that bloodline is just a bridge too far for some people. And maybe that includes the Queen. And maybe we don't know Charles as well as we think we do. Now, I, for one, never thought of Charles as being a particularly racist person. However, I know Charles, just like his mother, will do whatever it takes to protect that brand. That is. But I think the only time that he has fallen short of that was this obsession that he had with that 50-year-old hairdo called Camilla Barker Bowles. And I feel different ways about Charles on different days. I don't always dislike him, but lately I'm not necessarily a big fan of his because he's made some huge mistakes. And the worst of the worst was this 30-something-year-old man could not stand up to the firm to defend a 16-year-old girl who was being courted for his future wife. And then by age 19, she marries him. And at that point, this poor girl was drawn into a very cold, icy, isolating situation where she began to doubt her sanity. And the same thing happened, of course, with Sarah Tosuck Ferguson. One of these days, that's going to come out wrong. Sarah Tosuck Ferguson was also drawn into this situation. Now, you can try to use the psychology of, well, you know, nobody made them do these things, but we're talking about people, and I don't think anybody is really so drawn into the money, as they say, because it doesn't take a genius to know that these homes are museums, and all of these possessions are just that. They don't really belong to anyone. They're pretty much in a situation where, as they say in the aristocracy, I'm merely a custodian. So they're passed on from generation to generation. You certainly have use of said items, but it doesn't really belong to anyone, and they're not very practical. Well, kids, that's it for today. Anyway, interesting, and I rather enjoyed it. I don't know much about Nina Miskow, but that was very interesting. I think that she is someone that I'll definitely look into. If you know more about her, please leave a comment and tell me. I think she may be one of those people who have her very conservative days and her very liberal days, and mostly she just falls somewhere in between. But either way, I really enjoy her sticking up for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Harry and Meghan. Also, please like, share, donate, but definitely share this channel. Anybody who think would be interested in it. And I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.